Hour 2. Doug Gottlieb, the Duggar, is here joining us. Fox Sports Radio after my show. Joy Taylor, of course, as well. I want to start with what I thought was the biggest story of the weekend, Arizona Cardinals in totality. I think if Kyler Murray's great, I think he has a chance to be. They won the draft. I also think Josh Rosen it's really strange. There are people doing bad things all over sports in general. And in the NFL, we've got one star player you'll talk about did really bad things, and I can make an argument should never play football again. Josh Rosen has gotten a label as difficult, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I got to see proof after a while. A hot tub in college does not resonate with me as a bad guy. I thought Rosen this weekend handled this whole mess better than I would have in my 50s, with grace and humility. Tell people what he did. I mean, I've said before, if I would have come to this network and 6 months in, we like Costas. We're going to sit around and be like, I moved my family. The whole.
It's happened to me before. So.
But, I mean, I thought Josh Rosen handled himself incredibly well.
I did, too. I thought he became a sympathetic figure. I mean, not only did he post a thank you to Arizona Cardinals fans, but then he appeared at Larry Fitzgerald's charity softball game, right?
Yeah.
Look, the thing about Josh Rosen is, although he's become a sympathetic figure, and the Dolphins, I mean, you're talking about pennies on the dollar, where not only do they only have to give up a late second-round pick, but they also don't have to pay the signing bonus. So if he can become...
He's free.
I mean, yeah, it's an incredible deal for the Dolphins. But there's a reason that the Redskins didn't want to trade for him, that the Giants didn't want to trade for him, that all of those other quarterbacks went before him, because Josh Rosen... There's 2 parts to it. One, there's the thought that he's still fragile. Right?
I agree with that.
He had the shoulder surgery that caused him to stop playing tennis.
Yes.
He was injured every year he played at UCLA.
Yes.
Not his fault.
No.
But also the thought that, like, look, dude, you can't take up to a beating. The second part is the leadership aspect of it. You go back to when he was in high school, to when he's in college, to now as a pro. There just isn't anybody who says, who's a great leader? Josh Rosen. I love that guy.
Right.
They don't hate him. He's not Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler was so disliked in Chicago, they took him out of the locker room. He got dressed in an alternative locker room.
True story.
He was despised.
Yeah.
But there is fears that he could become, because he's so bright and smarter than everybody else in the room.
And knows it.
Right. And that's look, I've frankly not here, but I've run into that where somebody says, like, oh, you're so smart. That actually isn't the compliment that on paper it would read to being. So he's going to have to take a breath and realize why it didn't work. Because whatever he did within that first year, and a lot of it wasn't his fault. Like Steve Keim saying, Kyler Murray's my guy. Wait a second. You signed Sam Bradford, $20 million. You had Glennon for $5 million.
They spent a lot of money on quarterbacks. Then
you moved up for Josh Rosen. You had a coach you got rid of within 9 months. You had 2 offensive coordinators. So those are all Keim's decisions. Then now he's saying, no. Now I know what I want. That said, like, look, this is the reputation that Josh Rosen has. And as you've said, and I agree with it, reputations, when you're in your 20s, they're kind of earned. And so he's going to have to figure out a way to balance his personality, his ego, his intelligence, and become a better version of himself as a leader in Miami.
But where I support him is in all sports, and I'm not blaming any sport individually, but the NFL's got guys doing bad things to people. And they'll get second chances. This idea that we've kind of marginalized Josh, man, I got to see some videotape. I mean, I called out Baker Mayfield for a cop video. I thought it was reasonable, right? Like, I don't want my quarterback doing that. I was literally like, that is outrageous. No, it was a police video. You're a quarterback. You ran like.
Yeah, but let's not combine the two. Okay. Like, I don't think I'll get to. I don't think this is the biggest story of the weekend. Okay. I think the Tyreek Hill thing is
Kansas City football player. Yeah,
but let's also be honest. Like, this was clearly a business decision, and the Giants had a chance to trade for him.
Yeah,
not even necessarily a first-round pick. They could have traded a better second-round pick. They chose not to do so. The Redskins had a chance, and they both said, "We'll take prospects that aren't viewed as skilled as Josh Rosen, because we have tape on him, and there's been enough people that say he's just not a leader." And that's what I think you've missed on Baker Mayfield is you may not like his personality, but every locker room he walks into, he owns, he takes over, and those guys want to play for him, and that's the stuff it takes to be an NFL quarterback. Now, look, let's not bury it. We can talk about winning the draft and losing the draft and the Raiders and Mike Mayock and overdrafting guys and Dave Gettleman. Dude, the Tyreek Hill story is the biggest story of the weekend. We're talking the most dynamic offense maybe we've ever seen in the NFL, with the fastest player that we might have ever seen.
Yeah, I think he is fastest.
With the only quarterback in the NFL who could possibly overthrow him, and even he can't overthrow him.
Right.
And so the Kansas City Chiefs have lost their running back who led the league in rushing to domestic violence.
Yeah.
Now they're going to lose their wide receiver. He should never play football in the National Football League again, not just because of this and because of the audio tape, because of what he did at Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
And then they traded for Frank Clark, who's got domestic violence, and gave him $100 million guaranteed. But the Kansas City Chiefs, who were one play away, one offsides away from going to the Super Bowl, just lost Tyreek. Like, that's the biggest story. That's the biggest game changer of the weekend.
I had an NFL executive tell me this. They said, listen, the draft is what you're trying to do is find duplication for guys who work. You occasionally get guys like Brady who nobody works that hard. You can't find that work ethic where he goes to Costa Rica with his supermodel wife and is watching film all day. You can't duplicate Tyreek Hill's speed. Nobody in the history of me watching football, there's nobody that makes Deion Sanders look pedestrian. And so I do think I wake up this morning and I think Kansas City doesn't feel, as much as we all like Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, I would agree they don't feel quite as big. Let me shift to this though. I'm not a real big believer in win the draft, lose the draft. But if you count free agency and your draft, the San Francisco 49ers have added Dee Ford, Quan Alexander, Nick Bosa. Jimmy Garoppolo comes back. The Falcons, Coleman, the running back, and I think they hit a home run with their second pick, which is a wide receiver from South Carolina. No team to me feels differently athletically, like end of the season to this morning, than San Francisco. Good God. You had Dee Ford and Nick Bosa, and then Quan Alexander.
This is what they tanked for 2 years ago, right? And then they got Garoppolo, and they're like, whoa, wait. That's kind of speeding ahead of the. Now, look, it all works if Garoppolo can play and stay healthy.
Right.
That's the big thing. If he can play and stay healthy, you have a guy who's an incredible play caller and seems to be a really good leader in Shanahan as your head coach, and you have a team that is ready to go, right? Well, this could be basically what the Rams did going back a couple years ago when they changed coaching staffs, which is they had talent, they added talent with free agency, and they had drafted well enough for years. That's what it feels like with the San Francisco 49ers.
Let's go back to the NBA. So you've been saying this for years.
The last 2.5 years.
Kevin Durant's the best basketball player in the world. And I always felt he was 2 to LeBron,
okay.
And then LeBron got hurt and he moved ahead. I think you've thought he's better than LeBron longer than that.
Well, I just thought you go back to 2 NBA finals ago, right? 2 NBA when he was. Who was better in the second half of 4 of the 5 games? We judge players when we see them on the same court against each other, and that's the reason that Kevin Durant went to Golden State was he wanted LeBron on an island so I can show the entire world who's the better basketball player. And he felt like he was, and on the biggest stage, he was. And that's what he did last year. And you can say that LeBron didn't have a good enough team, and that's a fair argument, but that's not the argument we're making about teams or whatever. Who's the better player? Kevin Durant was the better player. And now, obviously, LeBron's gotten a little bit older, and he's gotten hurt. I don't think LeBron's the second best player. I think Kawhi Leonard, if you watch him over the weekend, the ability to play both ends of the floor is the difference maker. And that's what LeBron always had on James Harden, has always had on others.
Yeah.
And frankly, what KD and Kawhi have on Steph Curry, who's magnificent. But there's just things physically he can't do at the defensive end.
I think it's fair. Like, I love Kobe Bryant, but the last 5 years of Kobe, he wasn't a defensive player. I mean, he was resting, and I get it, by the way. But I think that's a very fair argument that Kevin Durant actually, I'm not saying he's Giannis the defender, but there's something there. There's length and effort. We got to go. LeBron, I do think he can't play both ends. He's got to take time off. Doug Gottlieb after our show, Fox Sports Radio. Colin Right, Colin Wrong, hour 2 coming up in L.A. It's The Herd.